Well, time now to take a look at the international newspapers this morning, and joining me to delve behind the headlines is Joseph Danquah, a political activist who worked in the Ghanaian Foreign Ministry, and he also has an MA in International Affairs and a graduate diploma in law, so very qualified indeed. I'm in very capable hands. Thanks for coming in, Joseph. How are you?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah, good to hear. Well, let's start in Nigeria with the paper This Day, which has the headline, National Assembly, APC senators get into a brawl over principal positions. We love a good brawl, don't we? Much more exciting than the usual House of Commons nonsense we have here. But on a serious note, the situation with the APC party isn't great, is it? They've just won the election, but this infighting is surely holding up the party and holding the country back.
Yes, this has even led to the president summoning three governors to his office, and it's got so bad that even when they went to the Senate, one senator from some far north called Safari Central called Gabriel Marafa pushed one of his colleagues. You see, the makeup of the APC is somehow interesting to the extent that it was a grouping of people who didn't basically believe in an ideology, but were seeking for power. So therefore, they gathered around the personality in the name of General President Buhari, so therefore they could get into power. But do they have an ideology? Do they have a belief they believe in? That's the big question. It's just more or less like, we want power, let's rally around this man, then what next after that? And that is what's coming to the head now.
Exactly. That's what seems to be most depressing of all, is that it's not really in the good of the country. It's not really for Nigeria that they're so upset. It's more power grabbing and trying to align themselves, trying to get good possessions for themselves.
Yes, and the problem here is that they've met, the President Buhari has met an empty coffers, whereby there's not enough money and people are not going to be paid maybe the next month or so. So they need to look at these bread and butter issues and stop grappling of oppositions, because as I've always said, I've said on this program and said on other programs, that he has a window of 6 months to try as much as possible to do something to show that he's really on the ball. And if he doesn't, therefore, he might go down as a weak president, and that's what he doesn't want to do. Yeah,
no, absolutely. Well, let's move on and go to the American paper, the Wall Street Journal. This is the Europe edition of that. It has a picture, I think we can see in a second, of migrants in Calais in France jumping onto the back of lorries as they went on strike about pay yesterday. You can see that picture there. About 3,000 migrants are thought to be living rough in Calais, waiting for the chance to cross the Channel. Why, Joseph, are they so keen to get into Britain in particular? What's wrong with France or other EU countries? Well, so they've obviously gone through those countries to get to Calais.
I mean, they've always thought that we've had a very easy or relaxed stance towards claiming of benefits, which the Conservative government is trying to change.
So do you think that's a sort of rumour, a stereotype, a labelling that goes abroad that kind of, people will talk about, oh, have you heard Britain, they give you... It's not actually true, obviously, but do you think that's why people are saying...
Yes, that's why they believe so, and they believe that, and obviously the migrants or these people trying to come in here would always speak amongst themselves and say, yeah, Britain is the place to go, and that is the reason why. And according to the Home Office report, 19,000 attempts have been made to come into the country, and they've been blocked. So therefore, you see that it's a thing which is becoming very persistent. And I think the government should be on top of this to block the borders. Every country has to protect its borders, and therefore Britain has to do so. Otherwise, it will be overrun with many of these
And the things like this, I mean, 3,000 migrants sleeping rough in Calais. We've obviously heard all summer really about the situation in the Mediterranean and people trying to get into Italy and to Greece. Is there such a demand now? Is there such a situation by which there needs to be a multinational approach to this, as opposed to countries just deciding on a piecemeal basis?
Yes, there has to be a multinational approach, and it all boils down to the failure of good governance in those parts of the world. And you see, with the action or inaction of the West is also contributing in terms of like the action in Libya and in Syria and Iraq. You see, so I think they should stem. The problem is, yes, the migrants can come in, but the roots cause of it is bad governance and instability in those countries, which is driving them across the Mediterranean and all that.
Okay, well, let's move on now to China and the China Daily. The headline there, Xi points way for Sino-US ties. The picture there is actually of the Vice Premier Liu Yandong meeting Joe Biden. The president, though, has said that China and the US should keep their relationship to one of cooperation, resulting in a win-win for both countries. This is all good rhetoric, Joseph, but a few weeks later something's going to happen, like the US, someone in the US is going to accuse China or Chinese hackers of hacking into the computer systems. There's going to be some kind of dispute in the South China Sea, which America will say. It always seems to unravel after these meetings and this, yes, we'll work together, etc. Seems to be quite a lot of suspicion between those two powers.
Yes, it's more or less like a love-hate relationship, and you know, based upon the principle of reciprocity, whereby I treat you well, you treat me well, and that is the basis they are trying to base a relationship on. But it's more or less like there's a lot of suspicion. The Americans don't trust the Chinese don't trust the Americans. So it's more or less like a hide-and-seek sort of game, you know, oh, we'll cooperate with you, but another time, you know, the other one stabs the other in the back. But I believe that China is now a force to be reckoned with, and America needs to be in partnership with them for a better world. But it all boils down to one thing. China wants to expand economically. They are now in Africa, helping up, you know, build, you know, factories, roads, schools, and whatever you've got, all sorts of infrastructure. And the Americans have seen themselves lagging behind in that area in the world. So, you know, the influence of China is worrying to America, and that's what America is trying to battle with.
Yeah, well, in many ways, the Chinese economy has overtaken already the American economy to be the biggest in the world. Let's go on to Australia. The Herald Sun, ABC of Jihad TV chiefs duck for cover as terror crisis grips network. This is after Zaki Mallah, who you can see there with the gun. He is a former terrorism suspect, and he was allowed on one of Australia's publicly funded TV channel talk shows and accused the federal government of pushing young Muslims to join IS. This is a huge story in Australia at the moment, with the Prime Minister asking the broadcaster whose side it is on. Do you think someone like Zaki Mallah, pictured there, should have a platform like that to ask questions? Do you think he has the right to be allowed to do so, in your eyes?
You see, there's a limit to free speech. Yes, there's free speech, but there's a limit to it. You can't be, in a way, instigating people to go on a jihad on national television. And for countries of the West, they are always under a threat of attack from extremists. And these are sort of things which pander towards such beliefs and practices. And I think it's not right for him to do that. And I think the Prime Minister has every right to say that, no, it shouldn't be aired, and such people should not be given a voice. Because they are not a voice of reason, but they are a voice of destruction and chaos.
You don't think if they were given a platform, then people would see what they really are and would see the holes in their argument and would be less convinced than any kind of underground things that you see online?
Well, but you see, also the problem here is that some too would pick to such a message. So it's a no-win situation. Yes, you can stop them, but others, you can allow him to speak, you can also stop him. But if you allow him, what happens is that those who believe in such an ideology will then pick it up and want to exercise it. And that's a problem here about free speech, whereby in as much as, yes, everybody has a right to air his views, your view should not incite others onto to do things which are not right for the society.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's also calls, obviously, that you need to engage them in some way, in other ways, as opposed to sort of leading them that way. You need to sort of give them opportunities, young people, etc. Australia is struggling that as much as Britain is. Really.
Yeah, they need to. Also, the government needs to be on top of its ball by not appealing to them, but to teaching them or educating them on the dangers of going on such missions, or into these jihad missions. But also the government should also look at them, not seeing them as enemies, but seeing them as partners of the war against terrorism. As therefore, there should be some cooperation between Islam and the West.
Joseph, that's all we've got time for now. Always very insightful. Thank you very much indeed.